It all began with one butter tart and an ambitious idea that put the town of Midland on the map.
The first Butter Tart Festival was held in June 2013. It was the brainchild of Barb Rawlinson. She was a downtown merchant who had a kitchenware store, and she baked butter tarts and sold them in her shop. And she realized people had the same passion for butter tarts that she did. So she decided to bring people to downtown Midland by organizing a butter tart festival, and it's had amazing success since then.
I think that she was a professional or something.
And of course, a festival such as this would not be complete without a competitive component.
We have judging in Rotary Hall all day long. It's for professional and home bakers. In the morning time, it's for traditional butter tarts. So you're playing raisin, pecan, walnut. And then in the afternoon, we have a different 12 judges who will taste the wild style butter tarts. They are butter tarts with a non-traditional ingredient or two. And from there, we have best in show.
It's a tough job. We're judging the best butter tarts in the province. So I don't take that lightly at all. I got one right here.
Broccoli and ham, the one here. And
I'm here for the butter tarts. Why are you here, Lily? Butter tarts? Yeah, we're here for the butter tarts. And honestly, haven't been able to go outside for like 2 years, so this is a pretty awesome event.
I don't think anyone had the idea that this would be as popular as it has become, but it has become one of the top 100 festivals in the province.
Do you like butter tarts?
If I'm going to eat a butter tart, it's got to be a raisin-free. I'm team no raisin.
So it does beg the question, why would anyone want to jump out of a perfectly good airplane?
Adrenaline, thrill, same reason they do anything. Yeah, it brings you alive. And then we're gonna go ready, set, go. Once we're in the air, okay.
And with just over 10,300 jumps completed himself, Skydive Wasaga Beach instructor Alec Tebow has seen and heard it all.
I've done a 92-year-old man, and I've done almost every age. Well, your brain says don't jump out of a moving vehicle, don't jump out of a plane. So you really, your brain is saying, I'm about to do all this stuff that I'm trained not to do, right? The first jump is the hardest for people. Once they're out there, it's no problems.
And for Sam McEwen, that first jump is about to happen.
Oh, I'm excited. And because you only have one life, let's jump out of a plane.
This sport is so safe now. You know, our equipment has been tweaked, and it's the safest it can possibly get as far as I'm concerned. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know, but there's not much danger involved.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you sure?
Yes.
No turning back?
No, never.
Okay, don't hit your head.
Yeah.
Go sit right behind the pilot. Put your back against this chair on your butt. Perfect, James. Go, buddy.
Tandem is when we're jumping out of a plane and I have a person strapped in front of me, and then we jump out, and that's tandem, 2 people. Not much training needed at all. Once we jump out, they can do what they want with their hands. They peace out to the camera or thumbs up. When the parachute opens, we give them control so they can steer and they can do spins and stuff like that, but not for landing. Then we take control back. There's a 45-second to a minute free fall, depending on the altitude you go up to. At about 120 miles an hour, we throw out a little parachute called a drogue first, so it slows us down, and we average out at about 120 miles an hour. Of course, if I take a bigger guy or a littler person, you know, it goes up and down, but it's average 120.
How was that?
Amazing! amazing.
Yeah?
Oh my God.
What was the best part of that?
The free fall.
You like the free
I
fall?
love the free fall.
Yes!
I could have done that forever.
Oh, you have to do it. You have to try something, everything. Try everything once. You have to try to try.
Come here! Come here!
The story of the Martyrs Shrine, located in Midland, Ontario, continues to be an integral part of our Canadian history, along with the church's relationship with the Indigenous peoples.
Martyrs Shrine is a National Historic Site and National Shrine honoring the lives of St. John de Brébeuf, St. Isaac Jogues, Gabriel Lallemant, and their companions, who were Jesuit missionaries and lay companions who served the Indigenous people of this region and around Ontario and what we now call Ontario and Quebec during the 17th century. The shrine itself is the place that houses this church, the relics of Brébeuf, Lallemant, and Garnier, and is therefore a pilgrimage site where pilgrims come from across the province, across the country, and indeed from different parts of the world to journey, to pray with these saints. And they come with desires for healing, with special requests, with a desire to have God's grace help them with some aspect of their life. And they pray with these martyrs in the Roman Catholic tradition, asking them to join them in their prayers to God for whatever that request may be.
Construction of the Martyrs Shrine, the Church of St. Joseph, was completed in 1926, replacing a smaller shrine which was located in Wabashin. It was felt a larger shrine needed to be close to both Springwater and the Sainte Marie Mission.
The architecture, the stained glass, the exterior structures all speak to some aspect of the church's tradition or its theology. Here at Martyrs Shrine, in keeping with that powerful story of intercultural connection between the Indigenous peoples and the Jesuits, there are elements of their reality as well as the Jesuits and the French cultural traditions that fuse together within this building and its architecture. At the heart of our story is a relationship between the Jesuit martyrs and the Indigenous people that they grew to love and came to serve. We cannot help but have the Indigenous people, therefore, at the heart of our own story as we continue to share the message of the martyrs. It is very important to us that all Indigenous people, Métis and Inuit, feel most welcome as they come to journey with us in the sharing of this story that began centuries ago. A story filled with challenges, extraordinary circumstances, but also great faith and moments of love that can, to this day, inspire that ongoing and necessary process of truth, reconciliation, and action.
This was a Soviet-made tank that we saw in Syria 5-6 years ago.
Dr. Andrew Gregory loves his job. He is the director of the Base Borden Military Museum.
Ever since I was a kid, I've been passionate about military history. So this is my opportunity to convey to people enormous pride in the efforts of our country, of our members of the military in this great enterprise known as Canada.
The history of CFB Borden itself began in the spring of 1916. Built on a sandy plain after the clearing and removal of many pine trees, the base operation surged ahead.
And very quickly, within weeks, thousands of people began arriving. So that by the end of the war, Base Borden has seen 330,000 troops pass through its gates for either part of their training or all of their training. In that sense, it's truly amazing to think that you cannot really reflect on Vimy Ridge, Passchendaele, Hill 70, the 100 Days, without appreciating that those are a significant number of those people were Borden trained.
The museum is an amalgamation of many museums with some historical collections held by different units on the base.
The vehicles behind me, the tanks a little farther away, are courtesy of the Royal Canadian Armoured Corps while they were here on the base, and the Royal Canadian Army Service Corps. I think you can say by 1970, there is clearly a museum presence. There are several museums on the base. You're in Hangar 11. This is an original 1917 built, purpose-built military hangar. This whole flight line was built in early 1917. This is really the birthplace of the Royal Canadian Air Force. I love looking at it and seeing the thickness of the steel, and it makes me appreciate how crammed it is in a tank. The core reason why the museum is set up is first and foremost for esprit de corps. But after that, then there's the wider public relations thing where you impress on people what we've done. I want the casual visitor to come away with an impression of great sacrifice, great societal investment in the enterprise in general. We want them to feel great pride in how Canada, a middle power, small power, and then middle power, was able to achieve so much.
Come July 11th, 2023, this popular Highway 11 restaurant just north of Orillia will celebrate 60 years in operation. And this man, Mike McParlin, better known as Keyman, was there from the very beginning.
When we first opened in '63, I was in high school. I was always here, and the customers used to come in and say, "You must be the Keyman because you're always here." My license plate on my car, Steve, says 63 Key, the year I started, and the nickname that goes along with it.
Paul Weber Sr. founded the roadside burger joint in what quickly turned into an Ontario institution.
Mr. Weber and family used to go up to the cottage in Sparrow Lake, and it was kind of a real commotion when you get up there with kids and everybody's excited, you got to unpack, they're hungry, etc., and they're very active. So he said, wouldn't it be nice if there were a place halfway to the cottage or almost at the cottage that you could stop, grab a bite to eat, and that will look after that challenge when you arrive at your cottage. So there was an old meat stand here, a fruit stand, way back. Mr. Weber investigated, purchased it. We opened up July 11th, 1963.
It is definitely a tradition. I've been coming here probably for almost 40 years. I started off when I was a camper, and we went to summer camp. I now live in North Bay, and whenever we travel south to visit my son in London, we always stop here. And quite often in the summertime, we do an exchange of grandchildren. So they come up here, we exchange the grandchildren, and then we travel north. So it's been an ongoing family tradition.
In 1984, Weber's made it a lot easier and safer for customers to access the restaurant from both directions.
We had traffic, a lot of traffic, and people were crossing the highway. And then they put up the barrier up. And they were crossing the barrier, parking on the other side. And then they put up the big screen fence, probably about a quarter mile down. And they would climb underneath that. And I said, Mr. Weber, this is not good. He says, I know, Mike. So Paul Jr. had a chance to pick up a bridge in Toronto that connected the CNE to the island there, Ontario Place. We lost about 25 to 30% of our business when they put up the barrier, especially on a Sunday and a Monday, when majority of traffic is going southbound on the weekends. So that bridge just was a godsend.
Oh, wow, yeah. And you were here, you were so fast with the burgers and no lineups.
Yeah. I've had the opportunity to work with my 5 children, which is, not many parents get that choice. My son, he started to referee basketball with me in October of '98. I was so excited. There was a car accident in town on James Street, and he and another fella were ejected from the car, Michael Paolucci, and they were both both killed December 13th, 98. Paul Weber Jr. decided that as a commemorative to me in friendship, he would put a memorial stone down there. Not a day goes by, I don't think of him, I think of his infectious smile and his positivity and the blue skies that he brought with him.
41 and 5, eh? Okay.
My wife, she's one of a kind. She's the hand that never lets go. She is, when we both were teaching, I would rush home from school and be out here for 5 o'clock, and she would be there with the young kids at the time, 2 in diapers, 1 just out of diapers. So yeah, she's one marvelous person. She has allowed me to do so much out here because she knows how much I enjoy it. And I in turn I just can't tell you how much I've appreciated that from her through our relationship.
Got it. Got one.
Sisters Sylvia and Carolyn Wilson are the owners and curators of the Sheffield Park Black History and Cultural Museum situated in Clarksburg, Ontario. The sisters are carrying forward a legacy with the museum that began with another family member's vision.
Uncle Howard Sheffield, had a dream and a vision someday that we'd have a museum, and that he thought that our history should be told and shared in the community. Who we are and how we got here into Collingwood. And one time he found little tin plates of pictures, and he was showing it to my sister, and Sylvie was saying, who are these people on these little tin plates? And Uncle Howard knew the names of our ancestors. So we had them enlarged, put up displays in our church, and the community came in to see Black history and who these families were.
The museum hosts 17 themed buildings on the property, each one containing various artifacts and exhibits relating to the Black history experience in the Collingwood area. The journey begins in the main building.
A lot of times when people come looking for Black history, they think history just started on the Western Hemisphere. Once the Africans were put on the slave ships and brought over, that's when our history started. We like to tell them the story began in Africa. So when you walk in, you come into Egypt, where ancient history began. And the things that we enjoy today are because of Black pharaohs, Black queens, Black kings, and Africa. So when we start with who the Africans were before they were enslaved, it's eye-opening, it's thought-provoking, and people are just amazed that this is Black history.
Some of the museum's artifacts and displays tell a story of a journey in chains that took place during a very bleak period in history.
Particularly the slave area, the plantation area, and seeing some of the shackles and the collars, and the most visitors will say, man's inhumanity to man. And oftentimes they're unable just to walk by that display or to see this really actually happen to a people. And then the question is, how do you feel about that ourselves? So we often answer that by saying, we know history can't be changed, things happened, but it's what we do with the information we have now that can make a difference, change people's thinking, their actions, and how they treat each other.
The Sheffield Park Black History and Cultural Museum can also claim that it houses its own Sports Hall of Fame.
A lot of our Black athletes here locally, like Collingwood and Brewery, Orillia, Owen Sound, they could compete. Our mother, for example, held 5 of the 6 high school records in track and field. And when it came time for the Tud Hope Collegiate Championships, she wasn't allowed to go because of her color. And I think they were afraid that she'd win. But 60 years later, she was inducted into the Black and Gold Society of CCI.
Howard would be amazed. He'd be very grateful for my sister, not saying myself, but our family, our people, and our friends. And he would always say, don't forget the people, those who have helped you get this far. Take them further and carry them with you, and they will carry on. He'd be very proud of this to see this today.
It's everybody's history. We might have the brown and the black skin, but if you think back, a lot of our great-great-great-great-grandfathers are white. So we're part of their history, and they're part of ours, and now we're part of everybody's. So come take the journey.
For Peter and Andrea Chiodo, owners of Flying Monkeys Craft Brewery in Barrie, Ontario, their passion for brewing beer together began right here.
That is our first foray into home brewing, and we were both in graduate school in Oxford, Mississippi, and we had tasted American craft beer and loved it, but as graduate students couldn't afford it. So with all of the arrogance of youth, we decided we could brew beer. And we could brew beer, you just didn't really want to drink it.
Packaging beer, those are the old days. Oh my gosh, everything was manual, it was easy, you know, just us doing it.
And now, with 500 different recipes having been brewed under the Chiodo's ownership, their passion for the craft brewing industry continues.
It's just become part of my life. And it was really something that we really enjoyed doing. So, you know, to make this our career was a wonderful experience.
Some drastic changes have certainly taken place with the brewery over the years, including a name change.
We were in the first wave of craft beer in Ontario, and we realized after a while, the first movers, we were all kind of alike. It was a very young industry. We were all named after our geographical region or a dead historical figure, and we just kind of thought, you know what, we need a lot more variety. And it wasn't really true to who we were. We're a lot more Flying Monkeys than we were Robert Simpson.
Normal is weird is what we kind of say here. And it's true, normal is weird. We like to do things differently. So we look at each brand as a life of its own. And I think that's the way we do things differently here.
Launching a bottle of Flying Monkeys craft beer off their roof and into space would certainly qualify as different.
One of our crazy ideas, we actually had a huge balloon, a hot air balloon, and we launched it from the roof of the brewery. We got the idea, somebody put a donut into space, so we're like, well, why can't, if you can put a donut into space, why can't you put a beer into space? Beer and donuts go together. So sure enough, we launched it back a few years ago, and it was a fun project.
According to Peter Chiodo, the actual process of brewing beer is relatively easy.
You have your ingredients, you brew it, and really the hard part is putting it into a package and making sure that that package stays as fresh as possible. You know, going through somebody's trunk in their car, you know, in their basement for, you know, a year, trying to really keep that beer as fresh as possible so that people really get the flavor, with the intended flavor of what the brewer kind of depicted when he did the recipe.
Flying Monkeys Craft Brewery also has its own science lab to further oversee potential quality control issues.
A lot of people can brew great beer, but it takes something very special to package it. And that's where our lab comes in. We're able to test all of our beer before it goes in a bottle. While it's in the can, we know what's going on with it. And you can definitely, you know, catch very early on any mistakes or flaws in the product before it even hits the shelves.
And some of those shelves are not just local ones.
We distribute to over 23 countries, and so we're all throughout the world. Asia, we're in South America, we're in Europe, US all over as well.
Cheers.
I think it's pretty unique that we have over 300, you know, craft breweries in Ontario, and pretty much every small town now is getting one, which I think is just part of the culture in Canada.
I love beer. I drink beer all the time. I like all styles, and every time we brew something new, it's like having a child. This one's your favorite.
Treetop Trekking is this whole adventure park where you can come and climb from tree to tree on different bridges and obstacles. You're high up off the ground, sometimes up to 40 or 50 feet in the air. But everything's secure and safe. You're wearing a safety harness and helmet, and our staff are here to watch over you.
No experience required. Staff will provide instruction as you move safely through the course. You supply the willpower.
We have activities here for just about everyone, as long as you're adventurous and up for a little bit of a challenge. Yeah, it's the perfect activity. So we see a lot of families or groups of friends coming out, but also groups like corporate groups and school groups out here for team building type experiences. Zip lines are mixed in with all the different obstacles that you're doing here. So you're climbing on wooden bridges, hammock nets, Tarzan swings, that sort of thing. But then there's also zip lines mixed in. So you'll be coming along and then you'll hook onto a zip line, zip to the next tree, and then continue on to the next ridge or obstacle. So if you're someone who's afraid of heights, I would just say that we get lots of people that are afraid of heights. You know, they're not too sure if this is something for them. But once they get going, once our staff help them work through the orientation course, get them comfortable with what they're doing, 9 times out of 10 by the end of the day, those people are laughing, they're having a great time, and they go home with this real sense of accomplishment that maybe they didn't realize they were going to get out of the day. Of course, they're coming to have fun, but they don't realize that they're going to get a little bit of a workout, but it's also really good for your mind and just clearing your thoughts and forgetting about all your stresses.
It's as Canadian as maple syrup, so they say. But exactly what makes this liquid gold truly Canadian? Owner of Shaw's Maple Syrup, Tom Shaw, knows the answer.
It's only made in northeastern North America, so this is the only place that you can find it in the world. 70% of all maple syrup is made in Quebec, and then the second place holder is Ontario. We make the best maple syrup. Vermont may not completely agree, but Canada's syrup is the best. The explorers originally came to Canada back in, I guess, the 1600s. It was already a major part of the Indigenous people's culture, and they're the ones that taught us how to do it. I love tapping big old trees like this. This tree is over 300 years old and has been tapped by our family for 100 years. You can see all the old tap holes in here, and it's pretty neat to think that we've been making syrup from this for over 100 years.
And it all started with Tom's great-great-grandfather.
In 1893, Thomas Shaw Sr. purchased the land from the Grand Trunk Railroad just to sell firewood in at the local farmers market. His son, in 1904, when he was 17 years old, decided to start making maple syrup to sell with the firewood in at the Aurelia Farmers Market.
4,500 tapped maple trees are connected by a network of 30 kilometers of tubing which run into main underground lines. From there, the sap flows directly into the sugar shack.
We're doing the same thing as a hobby person maybe on your street that you've seen pails hanging with. All there is drilling a new hole in the tree each year, getting out the watery sap and boiling and boiling and boiling it until it turns into that rich, delicious maple syrup. The recipe, the ingredients is already in the tree. All we're doing is taking water away from it, not adding anything to it.
The goal is to make 1,000 gallons of maple syrup each year, which is entirely dependent on the weather.
We need to have warm days and cold nights. This creates pressure in the tree. The more of those days that we get, the more pressure we get, the more sap we get. I love maple syrup. When it's boiling, it's the smell of my mortgage getting paid, and it just is a very sweet feeling. But I will admit to, after 2 months of making this, it's okay to shut the evaporator down for the year or two.
And Tom Shaw isn't the only one that loves the sweet taste of this uniquely Canadian product. Everyone does. Well, just about everyone.